Oh, we're live.
Well, we're live. Welcome to Climate Courage. My name's Andrea Edwards.
My name's David Coe.
And at the far end, as usual, you have me, Richard Basalato, on a Swedish midsummer's day, no less.
Nice.
Wow.
Not too hot, I hope. So today we've decided to tackle what I suppose many would consider a challenging subject and a delicate one too. But we believe that we can have a conversation about religion and spirituality with respect, and also respecting all views, even if we don't agree with them. So that's, I think, something that's important to the three of us. We've obviously not been able to get all of the religions or spiritual organisations involved in this. I don't think StreamYard would take that many speakers, but we've done our best to try and get as many as we can. To give a wider perspective, just a sec, I've got something going on here that's saying it's not working. So if you're listening to this and you think it's a conversation that you'd like to be part of in the future, reach out to David, Richard, or myself. We're always looking for guests on lots of different topics, but we think religion's an important one. So we typically start with the news, but we're not going to do that today. If we've got some time at the end, if we don't go over time, which I'm sure we will, we can talk about some of the news that's going on around the world, and obviously extreme heat's number one news item at the moment. But in the meantime, we've got an amazing lineup, and let's get started and introduce you to our guests. So I'll kick off with introducing you to Dr. Bhupender Kaur, and I hope I got that right. And she was introduced to me by Nisha Singh, who's a really great friend of mine. So thank you, Nisha, if you're listening. When I looked at Dr. Kaur's career achievements, it read like a novel. Truly an amazing lady who's done so much and given so much. And today you continue to work as a medical director and volunteer doctor at United Sikhs. And you've volunteered across the world in all sorts of disasters. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you saying yes.
My pleasure. I'm thankful. I'm thankful that you have introduced me, and I'm grateful that you've given me the opportunity to see how Sikh religion can help and to our climate courage. So
Yeah.
let me introduce myself, and as I'm sure it'll be okay if I read what I have written in the notes. Otherwise, I won't be as a good speaker as you and our orators as we have on the bench today. I hope I'll be okay with reading out.
No doubt.
Okay, thank you so much. As a human, respect and love for Earth and universe is the key to work towards its amelioration. Sikh concept is of Vaheguru and 10 Gurus. The 11th Guru is Guru Granth Sahib, the Holy Book. Guru being the teacher and Vaheguru the Almighty, the Divine. Let me introduce what the Sikh concept is and the relevant topic later. Vaheguru, the creator of the universe. Universe is manifestation of Lord. He is found within the universe. He sustains and is responsible for everything. Guru Granth Sahib states on page number 907, all are in the one and the one is in all. Sikhs believe that Vaheguru is immanent, Sargun, and so everything in the universe has Vaheguru's presence, and Vaheguru is a part of the universe in the form of a divine spark. He established the earth, the sky, the air, the water of ocean, fire, wood. He created the moon, the stars, and the sun, night and day, mountains. Mountains. He blessed the trees with flowers and fruits. He created all living organisms and human beings and the seven seas. He established three worlds as stated on Guru Granth Sahib in page number 1399. Nature serves as most common source of wonder. An incredible display of its dazzling beauty is all around us. The cosmos is pulsing with creative energy from the galaxy of the stars to the tiniest. The immensity of nature's majestic beauty instills in us a state of wonder and joy. Such an emotion is expressed by Guru Amar Das as Parpanch Vek Raya Bismar. The ultimate source of wonder belongs to ineffable, unexplainable, incomprehensible, mysterious, sublime Holy One, creator of all things. Guru Amar Das expressed views about oneness of nature and God. Nanak sun vek raya bismar, Mera Prabhu Raya Sarbat Thain. All things in nature are interdependent. The web of nature is so tightly woven that each phenomena in the universe is both effect and cause of all other phenomena. Guru Granth Sahib also emphasized such an interdependent relationship among all beings and things. Man and material world are perceived as having an interdependent relationship, reciprocally conditioning the life of one another. Guru Granth Sahib proclaims this relationship as Pavan Guru Pani Pita Mata Dharat Mehet. This Rat Doi Dai Daya Khele Sagal Jagat on page 8 of Guru Granth Sahib. Air is the vital force, water the progenitor, the vast earth is the mother of all. Days and nights are nurses, fondling all creatures in the lap. This means that air, water, earth, and life are all come from the true Lord and carry a sacred essence. Harming any of these elements harms the true Lord dwelling within them. For Sikhs, this understanding makes air, earth, water, life very precious, and its concern is deeply embedded in their roots. Sikhism encourages people to respect and live in harmony with the environment. There are many references in Guru Granth Sahib Ji that refers to the whole of creation as being sacred. On the page number 605, it states, because God's spirit permits through all of it. In being is the Lord, perceive, the Lord pervades all form. Nature, a treasured throne of wisdom, is a great teacher of amazing, priceless life lessons to live a happy and worthwhile life. It speaks to us through its various phenomena. Gurbani helps us to decode nature's invaluable lessons, inculcates that nature helps us to develop compassion and inner peace. It also guides us to help others to lead a better life. Earth is a place we live on and depend upon. Gurbani places a great deal of spiritual significance on the lessons we can learn from the earth. As Guru Arjan Dev Ji articulates on page number 272 of Guru Granth Sahib, that a God-conscious man has great patience and a true selflessness like earth. ब्रह्म ज्ञानी के धीरज जो मसुदा को खोदे को चंदन ले. The God-conscious being has steady patience like earth, which is dug upon by one for planting sandalwood trees and the sandalwood used by another. The tree teaches self-offering, sharing of virtue and endurance. The quality of self-offering is one of the most critical social virtues. Through its life cycle, providing shelter, bearing fruits and flowers, and after its cycle, utilizing its wood. Tree teaches us the sacred art of self-offering. Guru Arjan Dev depicts the self-offering nature of trees as खंड काट डारियो मन न कीजियो रोज काज उनो को ले सवारियो तिन न दीनो दोष. In 17th century, Guru Har Rai Ji was instrumental in developing Kartarpur Sahib on the banks of tributaries of River Satluj in Punjab is a town of parks and gardens. He planted flowers and fruit-bearing trees and medicinal herbs all over the area. The wildlife sanctuaries for the benefit of masses. The eighth Guru, Guru Harkishan, was famous throughout the whole of India for healing people with herbal remedies. If we preserve the rainforest, we may have a chance of discovering and utilizing these herbal remedies for the benefit of humanity. Poor methods of agriculture and mining for minerals and metals have been one of the main reasons for the continual destruction and reduction of planet's rainforest. It is the duty of every person to minimize their destructive impact on environment and adopt a less selfish and more responsible attitude. But it's high time now we need to not only protect nature but also be conscious while using human technologies with responsibility and accountability to reduce our carbon footprint so that we leave a healthier earth for our next generation. It is impossible for us to save environment until we recognize that we as individuals are responsible for our actions. As Guru Granth Sahib Ji states, we shall reap the results of the seeds which we sow. Sikhism also encourages humanity to follow the principle, benefit the whole human race. This is very holistic view which states that we, as a custodian of planet Earth, must perform those deeds which benefit everyone or at least the greatest number of people. Sikhs believe and practice in Guru Granth Sahib's teaching, which shows us the path of harmonious living with nature. Kar Seva, a unique to Sikhism, and it's involved in working together for the entire community to achieve a goal. This is essentially a voluntary work at a large scale. For a Sikh, volunteering oneself is to help a community is not just a good thing to do, but a religious duty too. Therefore, Sikhs believe that they have a duty to respect and protect the nature. Sikhism stresses the practice of meditation and selfless service. It is the combination of both which leads to enlightenment. Human body is formed of five elements: earth, water, air, space, and fire. And we disperse in them from whom we originated. Why not respect these elements when we are alive? As stated in Guru Granth Sahib at page number 1427, Panch tat ko tan rachyo, jano chatur sujan, jete upjo nanaka, leen tehe mehman. Value of human body is only as long it is alive. Once dead, it has no value. But an animal's mortal remains gives back to the nature completely, as stated in Guru Granth Sahib Ji on page number 870. Naru mare nar kaam na aave, pasu mare das kaas savare. As long as you're alive and you as long as you're alive and do your good deeds with your own hands, it is only the human form of creation which can act with more responsibility and accountability in taking care of nature. In Asa Devar in Pori number 20, it states, Appan hati apna, appe hi kaj savariye. Akal Takht is a place of justice with consideration of temporal issues. Akal Takht holds a special place for Sikhs, serving as their highest authority in both worldly and spiritual matters. Back in July 2009, the leader of Akal Takht emphasized the duty of Sikhs towards the environment, calling it as moral and religious obligation. This statement was well received as a positive step towards environmental consciousness. This directive from the leaders of religious institutions to safeguard environment was significant and binding, and implies the sustainable use of the planet's resources. EcoSikh was formed in 2009 to connect Sikh values with solutions to environmental issues, and its latest endeavor, the Million Tree Project, is the biggest ever. The initial aim to tackle environmental issues like deforestation and air pollution, while also helping people connect with nature. Sikh practice Sikh practice the Langar Seva, free food to all, irrespective of caste, creed, religion, or gender. Now we started providing free plant samplings as Langar Seva. SHR, the Sikh Human Rights Group, a non-governmental organization with UN EcoSo status, promoting environment challenges and solutions. On 17th May 2021, the SHRG made an oral submission regarding climate changes and at the international dialogue with the chair of expert mechanism on the right of development. The host of COP27 marks the 30th anniversary of the adoption of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. In the 30 years since, the world has come a long way in the fight against climate changes and its negative impact on our planet. We are now able to better understand the science behind climate changes, better assess its impact, and better develop tools to address its causes and consequences. COP28 was held in December 2023, held a side event on a plural approaches to clean the atmosphere, crafting Paris Plus 10 agenda. The basic six ethics emphasizes congruence between spiritual development and everyday moral conduct. Guru Nanak summarizes this perspective as truth is the highest virtue, but higher still is truthful living. The three key pillars of Sikhism are Kiraskar, honest living, Banchak, sharing with others, and Namjap, focus on God. In Sikh belief, taking care of environment is seen as a part of a connected and integrated approach to life and nature. They believe that everything in existence comes from the same source and shares the same destiny. Respect for Mother Earth starts with little things at an individual level, such as segregating and disposing of litter and waste in the bins, planting trees, using less or no to disposables, minimum wastage of all forms, and learning the art of recycling. It's time we learn to use natural resources efficiently with caution. Only when we discover the reverence of nature's biodiversity and other form of life in their own way, through their own customs, beliefs, and cultures, that the human population as a whole will act with greater passion for the protection of environment, taking ownership of their development and move away from what is currently found under the prevalence of real taking ownership for their development and move away from what is currently found under the prevailing legalistic and rationalistic approach. The 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, said, recognize the human race as one unit. This means that political, rational, national, religious, and economic divides are all meaningless. We need to work towards our goal to make whatever and everything to check climatic challenges. Effective communication and cooperation can help us achieve our goals to make this world livable and lovable. As the saying goes, every drop makes an ocean. Uh, Thank you so much for giving me so much of time.
Thank you. Such a holistic view to begin with, isn't it? It's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Shall we?
Indeed.
We're going to introduce our next guest, and then we will definitely talk more with you, Dr. Bipendra, about what you said. Richard, do you want to introduce Tim?
Indeed. You know, for some of us, maybe not all, but for most of us, Tim Wade, coming up next, is a fairly familiar face, co-host of the No Show, and he's a professional speaker. And at the moment, he's actually studying for a master's in divinity. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
You know, give us a bit of background.
Please tell us a little bit.
Thank you, obviously.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an interesting topic. It's nice to be here with you all to discuss this climate courage with a religious perspective to try and understand what the various faiths are thinking as well. Yeah, for me, it's been a bit of a journey from professional speaker to studying theology, but in a sense, when I sort of connect the dots, looking backwards, makes a lot of sense. I'd been speaking to large groups of people, and now I want to speak to large groups of people with something actually worth saying. Yeah.
Nice.
I think the other thing is, I mean, Andrea and I have talked about this a little bit with regards to, you know, why I decided to go down this path. There was a number of different reasons. It was sort of a bit of a tap on the shoulder that kept nudging me along the way quite a bit to do it. And but the other one was, you know, we'd been talking about climate care and change and challenges, migration, possible drought, starvation, a whole bunch of stuff during our no-shows, and as you've been talking about it here on Climate Courage as well. And, you know, the world's going to need hope. It's going to need a international effort with organizations that are set up to care for people. And it's going to need, you know, I mean, depending on your perspective, but mine is it's going to need a lot of divine help. But Andrea, you said that there was a comment that came up.
Yeah,
once
we'll
that
get
kind of-
we'll get to that.
yeah.
Let's
So-
introduce
Okay,
the other
we're
two.
introducing
Yeah.
people. Okay,
Yeah.
so anyway, I'm here. I'm representing. I'm studying at TTC in Singapore, which is Trinity Theological College. I got a year to go in my master's, and if I come out of that and the doors are still open for me to go through them, it could lead me to being a pastor or a pastoral staff worker in churches in Singapore. And the denomination I'm attached to is the Methodist denomination. So that's the Methodist Church in Singapore, which is its own self-governing authority.
Nice.
Thank you.
David?
However, having said that, I'm representing my views. I will be drawing upon some of the other things so that I don't sort of put myself in hot water or anybody else.
Yeah.
Well, courage is where you find that you are kind of always a little bit misrepresented, but you stay with it because there's something, as you say, that it's worth saying in that way. We want to introduce our next guest into the screen for you so that she can engage together with you. Who's Claire Westwood. I met Claire or introduced to Claire fairly recently as someone that we really must speak to. She is the regional director for the Episcopal Commission on Creation Justice. She was introduced to me as someone you must talk to because all this talk about faith and climate and all those things, she's doing it. So, Claire, welcome.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you also to Andrea, Richard, and nice to meet you, Dr. Bhupenda and Tim. Yes, I am based in Malaysia, and I am as David says, the regional director of the Roman Catholic Episcopal Commission that is set up by the Bishops' Conference, Commission of Creation Justice of Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei. I'm also the co-founder and executive chair of a new movement called Laudato Si Asia, Coalition for Culture of Care, Resilience, and Ecological Justice. And that's recent. That's in recent years since Laudato Si came out. The Creation Justice Commission renamed itself. And we've set off on this path of really pursuing creation justice and resilience. That's been critical to us. So we have 11 dioceses in the 3 countries. And my job initially was to roll this out. That's a vision, common vision and mission for people living in oneness with all creation, upholding creation justice with a mission to pursue and advance creation justice and resilience throughout our countries and then throughout the world. So for Asia, I've seen very much my work previously. I worked in NGOs and I've also worked in the corporate sector and have an MBA. I'm pursuing a very, very different life now from the corporate sector. But that's because when I joined the People's Movement, I fell in love with farmers. Small farmers all over Asia. I fell in love with rice fields and frogs and toads and cows and rural women and forests. And it changed me, it changed my life. So I worked on food sovereignty. I worked on ecological agriculture and then climate change because the farmers were having a lot of struggles with climate. And then when Laudato Si came out in 2015, that's an encyclical letter written by Pope Francis in 2015. It really changed. It changed the dynamics of the church, and it was a letter written to the whole world. A letter of love, calling on all of us to care for our common home and to take real, concrete action. And he was actually targeting the Paris UNFCCC meeting in 2015 that year. So that's been our work. We follow 4 strategies, which I hope I'll have time to go into later. But I'm really happy to be here and meet you all. Thank you so much.
That's great. Thanks so much for joining us, Claire. And now we're going to go to Africa, where last but not least, we have Gracious Dennis. And I actually met Gracious on a Twitter chat. We joined the same club on a Saturday night or Saturday day for some people called the Climate Crisis Club. And he, as he said earlier, no, you didn't say it earlier. It was before we started the show. Sorry. He's a program officer for gender justice and climate environment for the Church of Uganda. And he implements programs promoting gender justice and addressing climate change and environmental degradation So I've heard his message in the club, and I wanted to make sure that that message was heard by a wider audience, because I think it's an answer, to the challenge we face. So welcome, Gracious.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and thank you, colleagues. I'm glad to be here once again, just as the previous speakers just done a little brief about me. That is who I am. I am serving at the Church of Uganda, and I am glad to be here. And all what I do, I am passionate and looking at how can we promote environment justice. But of course, sometimes you can't talk about the issue of environment without talking about the issue of gender, because as the environment is getting depleted, the environment are getting exhausted, who are the people who suffers? It is the man and a woman. It is the human beings who suffer. And so it is very important that sometimes we integrate the things, because there seems to be intertwined. There seems to be birds of the same feather. Yeah. So a little about me is I'm a passionate and dedicated person with my professional background in academics. I did development studies. And so I am looking at, you can't talk about development without ensuring the issue of the environment is being protected. The issue of gender is being talked about. So I do it passionately with all my energy, as I am doing it for the Lord. And that is what drives me to do whatever I'm doing with a lot of passion. And so as earlier introduced, I work with the church. And so, as the church has the long structure that runs from the upper level to the grassroots level. And I think it is the best mobilization strategy that I think people need to copy. And as we are implementing different programs, using the church structure is very, very good, because it is well aligned. It runs from up to the grassroots local person down there. At least you have a church that you belong to. So working with the interfaith leaders and the different leaders from different church backgrounds to advocate for gender and for advocate for environment justice is actually something very, very key. And so I will dig deeper when it comes to time to what we are doing as far as the engagement of the faith leaders across the different faith backgrounds are concerned. But a little about me is I am passionate about that, and my skills, what have helped me to work to get more knowledge on this is I have worked with quite a number of organizations. Before joining the church organization, I was working with IRC. IRC is International Refugee Council, and it is in the refugee context. And when talk about the issue of environment, it is actually alarming in the refugee situations. And Uganda being one of the countries that hosts the highest number of refugees in Africa, and also having, I think, the second largest refugee camp in the world, and that is Bidibidi refugee camp. It is something that need more interventions as far as the environmental protection is concerned, because when refugees come in, there's always a struggle for the resources. There's always cutting down trees to ensure that they have cleared where they're going to stay, but also they are still using the local ways of cooking by using the wood as opposed to using other technology that will be used for cooking. So there is really a need to talk about these things in the refugee context, but also in the development context of the country. And so that has helped me a lot to gain a lot of experience on the community mobilization and engagement, and ensuring that every intervention as far as the issue of climate justice is concerned is done from the grassroots level coming up, because we want to ensure that they locally participate in some of this intervention. And it has helped me a lot to ensure that we mainstream these activities and ensure that both, as we are doing any other program for the church, you need to talk about the issue of gender, you need to talk about the issue of environment. And it is something that we have rolled across all the 39 dioceses in the Church of Uganda, which is in Uganda. And a diocese is some dioceses contain like 3 or 4 districts. So it means we are entirely across the entire country. Yeah. So thank you. That is a little about me. My background in education, I did masters in did masters in development studies, waiting for graduation, but also my bachelor's is also in development studies. So I am so much into development aspect, and I think we need to see how best can we transform the community and transform our society for us to have a better life. Thank you. Thank you.
Nice one.
Thank you, Gracious. Pleasure to have you here with us today.
Pleasure.
I think, as we're kicking off we have a very powerful lineup here using the football analogy, but we will not mention last night's results. It didn't go our way. However, I think it's probably helpful before we really kick off to have a rough idea where Andrea, David, and I come from with respect to religion. So, David, are you happy to start off and share with us your relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's helpful to give somewhat of a background. Really, I mean, I was born Catholic, but really faith with regards to climate is something that's become much more recent, a much more recent awareness. I spent the first part of my career working as a physicist. I was a research fellow at the University of Tokyo. I was a university lecturer and led a research group at the University of Oxford. So I'm kind of that hard science, rational thinking world. Before moving over into the investment world, where we spent 30 years making money for big money. So that was that hard-nosed, kind of, it's all about the money kind of world. And honestly, I was fully involved in both of those. And we started looking at really the issue of sustainability and climate and so on. And what increasingly we've come to realize, I think there was almost an epiphany moment when I was at this workshop and everybody was talking about the problems that we face and what we must do and all the rest of it. When it hit me, life and the world is not a set of problems to be solved. If what we want to do is at all ever meaningful, it's because life is there to be lived. And what struck me was, if you're ever going to approach the world from that angle, spirituality has to be the forefront. What is it that makes you get up in the morning? How are you, as Dr. Bhupender mentioned before, do you believe that there is a place for you, that the world is one and you are one with it? And those are really the sort of point that Richard and I ended up with in terms of thinking about, right, how do we go forward and actually think about what are the right steps? So faith then surfaced again with a renewed energy and a renewed conviction that we're not going to resolve the problems we face, because solving them as problems do not actually answer for us what are we solving them for.
All right, so I'm probably the person who's the least believer, although I have to say I have always strongly resonated with Eastern ideas when it comes to faith. I was born into a Catholic family, very serious Catholic family, went to Catholic school all the way through. I stepped away from religion when I was 15. I then spent 20 years reading every book I could read on every religion, going back thousands of years, trying to understand why we had religion in the first place. So I never really got the answer, other than religion is about trying to explain things that we can't understand. That was my basic conclusion, which some of you will disagree with, I'm sure. But yeah, so look, I don't think there's a label for me. I respect people of faith, of all faiths. I respect religion. I just personally organized religion for me, especially as a female. It just doesn't speak to me, but it doesn't mean I'm not a spiritual person, if that makes sense. But I'm probably the least of the lot. Richard?
Yeah, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle there, right? So grew up in Sweden, which is not a religious society, officially, Protestant. But my father was an immigrant from Italy and a Catholic, and he really rejected Catholicism coming out of it in World War II. He saw things that he couldn't reconcile with religion, and he was the least religious of my parents, I would definitely say. However, I have a great many friends who are very religious, like David and others. And I've always been very envious of the amount of actual joy they get, an actual uplift they do get from just being part of that belief. That doesn't mean I'm an atheist, actually far from it. I do very much believe in a higher spiritual plane. And I do think there are definitely moments, particularly in nature, when you do feel that there is an other presence other than the here and now. And I cannot really explain it by any other mean than saying there probably is a God. There probably is some essence in a metaphysical sense that we cannot fully explain through science and rationality, and it means it exists. And I really, really envious of the people who have found their pocket, and I'm one of those who are open-minded, because I think pretty much all religions I've come across have elements that I deeply sympathize with, very deeply. And I'm not rejecting it, far, far from it, but I'm still in this space where I'm not actually sure if that bucket is fully aligned with everything I believe in. But yes, I'm not an atheist in that sense, absolutely not, because I do believe in the higher influence and the higher. There's a higher being than us that's out there for a reason that I cannot fully explain, which actually buggers me a bit too, to be honest.
Yeah, getting all the answers for the universe. All right, so I want to take a step back to where the original idea for this came from. It was actually something that happened to Tim and I on the No Show. We were talking about the environment, and we had these comments. We didn't know who they were, and they basically said, "Why don't you all just shut up? God will sort it out." You know, so I mean, if you talk about the environment, you're going to come across people like this. It's part of the job, right? But I was really stunned by this comment. You know, I have a lot of conversations with my mother about religion. She's extremely religious. So, and we have very honest back and forths. But I was stunned because to me, it sort of goes into the whole free will conversation as a starting point. But the other thing is, you know, you look at the stories in the Bible, God gave us Eden, and I go down to the beach and it's completely trashed with rubbish every single day. And it's getting worse and it's getting worse, and there is nothing happening to change this. But, you know, no matter what faith we follow, and we heard Dr. Pipenda talking about it, God also created nature, right? That's part of the story as well. So, Tim, start talking about human agency within the context of faith. You know, is God going to sort it out, or are we going to sort it out? Where's the obligation lie?
Well, Richard's searching for a higher being that has all the answers, and I'm not that being. But but I can give you an opinion, and I look. We've been given free will. We've been given agency to make decisions and choices. The Bible clearly says that we're the hands and feet. We're to go out there and do, and take part and be active in the world, whether it's bringing people to spiritual faith or leading by example. And I think this person's comment, though, I mean, so is God going to sort it out, or are we going to sort it out? Well, we're going to sort it out in accordance to the way he wants us to sort it out. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. It's not what everybody does. We've all been given a choice, you know, the ability to choose. And the reason why we've been given the ability to choose, not that this is a element of apologetics, but it's because if it's about love, if God is love and relationships are about love, then that freedom to choose, we need that freedom to choose to love. Otherwise, it's controlled, forced love, which isn't really love. So we need that freedom to choose. But that freedom to choose means we have the freedom not to choose, or the freedom to turn away, I guess, which was the whole sin in the world business. Look, going back to this person's statement, shut up, God will sort it out. There was a song, actually, and I'm trying to remember the guy's name. I think it's Matthew somebody or other, but that's not really going to help anyone, where he wrote this song where he was sort of shaking his fist going, you know, all these kids are starving in the world. You know, what are you doing about it? And all these families are breaking up and arguing with each other. What are you doing about it, Lord? And he's sort of getting so frustrated with all the injustices and the abuses and everything else. And he's sort of shaking his fist going, what are you doing about it? And then God spoke to him and said, well, that's why I created you. And it was like, we're supposed to do something about it. We're supposed to get together and do it. We're supposed to have a moral, ethical turning point, tipping point, perhaps wake up, maturity, where we decide, actually, we're here to do something about it. And we can't do something about absolutely everything, but that's why there's like 7 or 8 billion people in the world. So, you know, we've we're here to work together as a perhaps in smaller parts. There's lots of biblical imagery where we talk about, we're only parts of the body, but we work together as those parts of the body. We might be a fingertip, but we're working together as parts of the body, meaning we're working together in organizations here to help various aspects of things that need to be fixed and done. Unfortunately, we're also dealing with a group of people that are not on board with this value system or this ethical system, or they've got a different value structure. And David was talking a little bit about the value world that he was in, where it was all about make more money for this. My wife was working in an organization where about 15 years ago, their goals were, let's take care of the people and let's make a huge profit. And then she left the organization because it had shifted to, let's just make $1 billion, and had forgotten about the people. And I think people can be on board with the making money if that money is to do something good. If there was a billionaire out there who had this sort of noble aim to go and eradicate this and help that and change this and change that, I think we'll all be on board with this person. Unfortunately, we get the narratives. We get the greenwashing, or we get the PR narratives that come out saying they're like this, but we discover after a while that perhaps they aren't. But again, we're all human beings. So this person saying, shut up and God will fix it. Well, Revelation says, yes, there is an end date where there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to happen. And if it's shut up and wait for God to do that, I'd rather be dead before that all happened, because that's going to be a disastrous situation when that happens. But I'm happy to do my bit to try and make the world a better place for me being in it now, and to help those people who need help, perhaps finding their way now. And that's the legacy I think we're leaving. Some people, if they're there's lots of different things here about that we could be talking about here. I guess I'm just trying to answer that question. You can come back to me later with what the church is doing. But with that particular question, I think the short answer is God is in control, but it doesn't mean that he's moving everybody to do everything, that we have no choice of our own. It's like a parent watching their kids play, and they're going to do something that may hurt themselves. The parent, will care for the child, but at some point, the parent will let the child make their own mistakes and learn from them, as much as everything that the parent gives them to try and instruct them in the first place. So, but having said that, I think this person who said, shut up, God will sort it out, has possibly got a couple of different perspectives that they're coming from. And I think one of those perspectives is it's too big and they feel too small to be able to do anything about it. And they've abdicated their personal responsibility to God to come in and fix it. Whereas I think what God wants is for that person to actually participate and not just be a spectator in the world, but to actually participate in it. So they may feel overwhelmed and therefore they've just put their head in the sand, or they've abdicated that responsibility. They may also be from a perspective of almost a literal translation or literal understanding, where they're reading it going, well, God's going to come in and change it all and fix it all, and we want that to happen. So let's just destroy everything so that it'll happen faster. That would be a very peculiar theology, but I think I think it's crossed some people's minds before. It's like, well, the faster it goes down the toilet, the faster we get this perfect world. But I don't think, if you're a deity that's running the whole show, you're not going to think that person doesn't need some judging. And then I guess a third perspective is that, I don't know what the third perspective is. The third perspective could be they're just trying to shut people up about the climate side, because they're paid to stir it up and silence people. Another perspective could be that they really do honestly believe that that God will solve the problem, and a scientist will come in, and God is working through lots of people in lots of different parts of the world, and but it's not as if he's going to suddenly. I don't believe he's going to suddenly appear and go, well, here it's all changed. Not until second coming. So, yeah, I mean, my perspective is that the person is, I would say, abdicating that responsibility because they feel it's too hard.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting view. It's it's sort of Monty Python went through my head every time you said he in reference to God, because of course in many parts of the world it's not just he, it's she as well, because goddesses are still prevalent in many religions. But I sort of think we are the stewards of this world, and abdicating responsibility. Yeah, and I don't know, from the money men, what do you guys think when you're hearing Tim talking about that?
Personally, I'm very aligned with his thinking and views. It's we cannot abdicate our responsibility and just throw it out there and say, what, something's going to come up, God or elsewhere, and help us. Ultimately, we've been put on this planet for a reason, and then we can debate the reason. But if you believe in that whole notion, there comes a responsibility that goes along with the actions you take, and you cannot separate that. You are ultimately responsible for the choices you make in life, and it's up to us to define what we believe are the right choices. And for me, you can never ever abdicate that responsibility. So
I think the problem is not that. The problem is actually the opposite. The problem is we take too much what we believe God is telling for us is the right thing for us to be doing. And so what you have all these people who go out there saying, we just got to go along and do more of this or do more of that or whatever it is. And along the way, you see the damage that goes along. The 9 planetary boundaries and the problems of those things are all the consequences of people feeling they are doing God's work. Goldman Sachs chairman, what's his name, famously said, "We do God's work."
Lloyd Blankfein.
I think it's not that we leave it to God, it's that we believe we always do God's work. But few actually read, as Dr. Panda refers to, kind of reflect deeply about what that actually means.
Yeah, I have a question actually for Dr. Bhupender here, because coming from her perspective, as a person who has done unbelievable amount of good in the world, you've been to Nepal, you've been to Turkey, you've helped out in areas that have been absolutely struck down by the worst of disasters that have happened to them. Do you sense that those people are angry, or do they still have hope when you come and you see the devastation that happened to them, which is on a scale that someone fortunate enough to be living in London is never ever privy to, at least not yet. It might happen one day.
Yeah, true. That is true. I think in time of crisis or disasters, that's the only time I think people tend to remember God. And it's the only way we find solaces in. And we try to connect with the Almighty for the good things what He has given us. Maybe they are saved after the earthquake. Maybe they have been taken care of after the earthquake. They have been given sufficient amount of support, both not only monetarily, physically, and emotionally also. So there are always God-fearing people around. It's not that they they don't take things in their hand and say this is our responsibility. They leave it on the Almighty as to leave it off. But as you said, the people who are in distress, the people who need help, are really God-fearing, and they depend on the Almighty's wishes or almighty, they want some miracle to happen so that they come out of this sort of tragedies. Can you come back again with your question, please?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, these people, they still have more hope than anger when you come to them, because I think that is very important in the context of how we will actually go forward and tackle these issues. Can we instill hope that we can come out on the other side, or will we end up in a situation where there is only anger?
That is true. That is true. Because the basic thing that we fly off such a long distance from India to Turkey or to Bangladesh or to Nepal somewhere to help people around, the feel itself not only gives us a satisfaction, but they also have hope that people around the world are there to take care of them. They feel that we are empathetic towards their losses, to their sufferings, to their monetary losses also. So these people are really they don't blame God for whatever's happened to them. Whatever happened because of, and luckily for me, wherever I have been, it was the people who always acknowledged that it was their fault who were misusing the resources. So much of earthquake happens because of so many earthquakes or natural disasters. Nowadays, 90% of the time it happens because of our not taking care of the natural resources. We have taken too much from the planet, then we can give back to the planet. And how long will the planet sustain with our trying to take away everything from the planet?
Yeah.
So as the disasters are starting to get worse, and I'm sure, I mean, one of the things that concerns me the most is there's more and more and more, which means there's going to be less and less and less that we can do to support them. So we always see the best after a disaster, the community comes together, but then as time goes on, you know, domestic violence increases, violence towards women and children increase. As time goes on, there's going to be less help on the ground. There's going to be less people like you turning up to help them because you can't be stretched that thin. So are you starting to feel that acceleration is starting to happen, where there's more and more?
That again depends on the country or the people around. Not only me as a medical director, international medical director of the United States, we take care of the medical needs, but I personally also as a clinical psychologist, we do run camps trying to educate them, trying to make them emotionally strong, saying that this is not the way to tackle the stress, this is not the way to how a community should react, this is not the way how it should be dealt with. It should be a collective, a positive, a progressive effort to combat whatever disaster has happened. Either is destructive as it happened in Nepal or Turkey or Bangladesh, somewhere else. But it's that we as humans need to understand that we are in the utmost utmost creatures of this planet. As Sikh, we are taught that this is the human form, human body is the supreme living organism on this earth. We can use our mind, we can use all the body parts for a positive growth of the society. And not only being physically, but also in making people psychologically strong, emotionally strong, trying to rehabilitate them, teaching them social skills, trying to tell them this is not the right way to behave.
Do you feel is your hope still alive? Is your faith still alive? Does it get battered around sometimes? Like, how does it impact you?
Come again? I didn't get you. Come again?
You see and have witnessed many terrible situations and people suffering a lot. How does that impact you? I think a lot of people are sitting watching social media or the TV, but you're there on the front line. So how does it impact you personally?
Personally, again, as my guru says in Guru Granth Sahib, it's like gonge ki mithai. It's the pleasure of helping somebody, the pleasure of doing good deeds, the pleasure of being available for the society it's so it gives you so much of inner peace, inner soothing, which cannot be expressed in words. As in Gurbani, it says, Gonge ki mithai. Gonga is a dumb person. He's not able to express the sweetness what he has eaten. It's the same way. I cannot express the inner peace, the happiness, the contentment, and being thankful to Almighty for giving me this opportunity to serve the nation. And I'm blessed that way that my family supports me in all my deeds. My children support me in everything, whatever I do. I'm really a very blessed person in that sense.
Beautiful. Anyone got any questions?
Can we maybe bring Claire in as well, and then Gracious about just this part of how they see that aspect of faith? Is it to leave things be, or how does it affect and drive how they actually work, and how does it lead them to inaction, or does it bring them to action, I guess?
Andrea, I come from the Catholic school too.
You're a good girl.
Okay.
Yeah. I think when I started this work, I think God planted me in the field, away from the world that I knew, the city life and the urban setting, and planted me in the fields. And then now, after years there, doing work across the different countries in Asia, walking through villages and so on, to be planted back in the church to try to take up this mission of spreading the word of Laudato Si, which is actually, to me, no different from the original gospel message of hope, the good news. When I started, I thought I had to convince everyone, this is it, this climate change and so on and so forth. And today, I've done a 180-degree turn. I go in and I don't believe I have to convince anyone. My job is to simply speak what I believe to the best of my knowledge and ability, the truth about the situation. And it is up to each and every listener to take action or not. If it is the time for them to act, they will act. I've spoken to all kinds of people. I know the questions now they will ask. I know, like the comment you had earlier, shut up, God will do everything. All different variations of that. It shows me where people are. And we're all at different places. So that person is just not ready. Yeah, it's not ready. And he firmly believes he wants God to solve things. It shows where he is in his faith or where she is in her faith. So now my job is to tell people the truth. I've seen people cry. I've seen people deny. I've seen people skeptical, you name it. Okay. But there is a difference between rural and urban, how they accept the truth. I think God spoiled me. I always tell him, you spoiled me by putting me in the field. It's like pouring water on fertile soil, it's just soaked up immediately. Talking to urban people, we have too much, I think. I think our cup is too full. There's all these philosophical questions and so on. Am I still in?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
I just wanted to feature you.
All right. Yeah. And
there we go.
There's less acceptance of things that to do. A very good example is one of the tenements of working with people's empowerment is not to tell them what to do, because everybody tries to tell the poor what to do. And so when we go in and if we really believe in people-led development, we don't tell them what to do. We discuss with them, we dialogue with them, we see where they are and what they're willing to take up or not. But in the urban sector, I started to have all these requests. Tell us what to do, Claire, tell us what to do. And I resisted for years. I said, no, you are doctors, you are engineers, you are teachers, you figure out what to do. It's not rocket science, Switch off the lights when you leave the room. Switch off your engine when you're waiting. Simple things like that. Don't throw rubbish. Don't throw rubbish in the drain. Like I said, it's not rocket science, but they insisted after 2.5 years, my priest said, give it to them, Claire. If you want to help them. So I made a list of 70 things. I said, this will keep you busy. I go think with the rest of it. All right. So it's different strokes for different folks. But what I've learned is one thing, is this. I go out there, I tell them the truth. I don't how do you say, I don't cater to when people say, I want it in 2 minutes, I want it in 3 minutes. I'm talking about saving the world. Hello. We're talking about the fate of your children and grandchildren, right? If you want it in 3 minutes, go someplace else. Because I'm here for the serious stuff. All right. It's not I can't do it in a minute and a half. But why? Why would I want to do that? And will you really do something after that? After all that trouble of making the video and so on, just to entertain you for a 3 minutes? No. So now take the time. I'm there for the serious people. And so I've seen people take it up and just run with it. They're doing far greater things than I imagined. And there are others who are still doing nothing. So to me, it's where you are and what you're willing to do. And there's only one question really to ask. For things to change, who must change? Do you want the situation or not? Everyone says no. But who has to change? There's only one answer. It's not even we. It's just I. So until I am willing to take accountability, when I go there, I say, I'm here because I know I am accountable. It doesn't matter what percentage I've contributed to greenhouse gases and so on and so forth. Maybe I didn't know then, but it doesn't matter. All it matters now is, what am I going to do about it? How much sacrifice am I willing to make? And am I going to calculate, like how much you generated and how much I generated or not? To me, I think that's a person's readiness. So what we really need to do is raise consciousness, because there's this great unconsciousness that is over the earth, and there's all these false solutions. Climate has become this fiasco of where companies and the powerful actors are really running away and creating more of the same inequitable solutions. So you see what's in people's hearts. And the climate crisis to me is simply a magnifying glass. It's simply a magnifying glass of the inequitable system that is beneath it. So it's brought everything to the surface. Everything that was done in darkness is seen in the light. That's what the Bible also says, right? So acknowledging these truths, I think, is our message. So continue speaking. People take it up or not, that's not on us. That's on them. That's my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, no, that was really great. I really love that.
You did that in under 3 minutes. You can do it.
Yeah, I'm with you on the 3 minute thing. It's like, oh God, do you know how big and complicated this situation is? Yeah. What about Gracious? What would you like to add? I'm going to put you over here.
We'll get the long version another time.
Well, thank you very much. I just to find out how many minutes do I have? 3 or more than 3?
Yeah, just what speak from the heart.
Okay, thank you very much, and I am so delighted to learn. This is the experience sharing, and sometimes learning is a process and doesn't stop in one way. We learn, unlearn, and relearn new things along the way. And I am glad that we are learning and unlearning some of the practices that we need to copy and see how we can make this world a better place for all of us. And I would want to talk in the perspective of Africa. Africa is, I don't know, the challenge we have as Africans is the mindset. We have the challenge of the mindset, which needs a lot of intervention to address, first of all, the thoughts, the minds of an African. Yeah. So people believe in just funny things that you would really see and say, this is a common sense thing, just as my sister, the previous speaker, talked about. That, you can tell them this is really not right for you to dump the kavera, the polythene bag, just anyhowly. But because of the mindset, the person who sees and say, now, there are people who are being employed to clean. So you can just look at that kind of mindset setting and the kind of rigidity and the kind of thinking that people have. So I think that would first of all start my conversation, that we need to do much as far as mindset is concerned. And I think we need to do our part, as the Bible says, we do our part, and then we also leave God to do others by letting people know that whatever they're doing sometime may cause effect on themselves, but also on the environment. Because once the environment is affected, then the consequences come back to the human being. And so for the case of Uganda, just to borrow lift a little, because Uganda is not any far from any African country. A lot of plastic bottles are being dumped anyhow. If you are to come to Uganda and you move in the streets of Kampala, you find everywhere the plastic bottles are being thrown anywhere. Yeah, the polythene bags are anywhere. Yeah, and you go down to the deep area, you find people are cutting down trees without replanting trees. And at the end of it all, people are destroying wetlands, and we have the fully pledged Ministry of Lands and Wetlands who are supposed to protect the environment, supposed to ensure the environment is being conserved, but they are not saying anything. You see someone is putting a factory, an industry in a wetland, but the government is quiet, is silent. So I think also we need to see how best can we hold these people accountable. But by and large, I think they have experienced the effects. Because of recent, we had temperatures being very, very high, and people were now starting to make noise. Yeah, at what is not happening. Yeah, what is not happening. People were now starting to look at the clothing that you put on just to cover the body, but entirely you want to have fresh air because it was very extremely hot. And if you pass through Uganda, when you're up there, you see like Uganda is green, but if you come on ground, there are issues that really need to be worked upon. And so the issue of food security, they have felt it. There is an area called Karamoja. I think if that would pick you would pick interest to look through more about it. It is one of the dry area, but it is also one of the areas rich with minerals. Yeah. So there's a lot of mining taking place, but they are not looking at after mining, can we reclaim back the environment? Can we, cover back the soil so that, the soil remains in its nature? So it is being exploited and the land is just exhausted for nothing. And yet it is an area where the larger population come from. And we are not looking at that. And so that informed our program of the Interfaith Action, interfaith engagement of interfaith leaders to come up and speak about some of these things. And of course, we know we all belong to a particular faith background. And, just like other colleagues did say, my parents are staunch Catholics. My parents, yeah. But as my sister Andrea didn't mention, sometimes you got to sit down and think about where does this thing or where did it come from and where are we heading? And sometimes you got to make your own decision and say, no, I think I can belong to, we have freedom of worship, yeah. So it is the main thing that we need to bring in the faith leader, because all of us, we at least listen to the voices of the faith leaders. And I am sure on the space we have the pastor. Pastor will bear with me witness that the people will always listen to whatever you tell them. If you tell them do this, they will say, oh, because they want to book their plot in heaven. So they assume by listening to whatever the pastors are saying, whatever the reverends are saying, automatically they qualify to open the gate to enter heaven. But also it is one way, it's an opportunity that we can best on to ensure that we penetrate the community and ensure that they are aware about some of the things. And so our engagement with faith leaders has been so instrumental. And of course, I am going to share experience, because it is a by and large that, first of all, once you want to have something done, you have to win the big fish. So how do you win the big fish? You look at who is that big person that is influential to all the faith leaders. And that is the person that you should first win the heart, to let the person know that this is what the actual sense, this is what is happening, and this is what we need to do. And if we do this, I think by this time, we would have reached a certain level. And so if you educate that person, because we don't want to assume that they all know, no. Some of them do not really know about some of the things. So once you don't talk to them, once you don't let them know about some of the impact of these things, or don't let them know about some of the implications of these things, then they will not understand. And me personally, I've told them that, the church stands more on offertories that the Christians collect. And now if the environment is affected and the Christians are not doing farming, Christians are not having what to sell, Christians are sleeping hungry, how do you preach to a hungry soul in church? Yeah. How do you expect the offertories to come? And that is why you see sometimes in most cases, now for the case of African, men are rarely in church. Yeah? They are good at dodging, especially men. They are really good at dodging prayers, because someone say, now, how do I go to church? I am dressed smart, but I don't have money for offertories. People are going to give offertories. I am seated, so better remain at home. So this is what I always keep telling them, that, we need to do much as far as empowering the community to conserve the environment, but also to be economically empowered, because once the environment is not conserved, then there's no way you can be economically empowered. There's no way you can do any investment that can generate income that will sustain the church. And once the church is not sustained, then definitely people will be on their own, and they will say each one for himself and God for us all. And that will be the say. So it is something that triggered us to engage more faith leaders to participate actively in this activity. And it has picked fire. I want to say it without any fear of contradiction, that For now, the case of Uganda, and especially the case of Church of Uganda, we have introduced 2 months in a year. And within these 2 months in a year, people everywhere across the country, we are talking about environment. How do we protect our environment? How do we conserve our environment? How do we plant trees? How do we ensure we do dumping in the right place? Yeah. And it is cutting across, and we have ensured that definitely that every time you're on the pulpit, you're preaching the gospel, can you integrate your messages in line with the environment aspect? Can you see how you can integrate? Because God gave us this environment to look after, not to destroy them. Now, if we destroy them now, what if the time God comes tomorrow and find the environment is destroyed? How shall we answer? Have we been good stewards or we have been bad stewards? That would be the question that should be tickling around. And it's a question that we have encouraged them in every preaching, in every interaction that they are having. The message of environment, the message of gender should be integrated. And it is being done. And I want to say, one of these days, consecration, Pastor, there's a consecration and there's baptism, yeah? And it is now a principle that if your child is to be baptized, you have to come with the trees to plant. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yes, you have to have a tree
It's
to
so
plant.
simple, right?
I like
It's just
that.
so simple. It's such a simple idea that anyone can do, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's just a simple idea that all of us can do. You're celebrating your birthday.
You can also have,
and all of us
you
here,
also
we
have
should
this
also look
point.
at that.
I mean,
You're celebrating
you
your
also-
birthday, and probably you're celebrating the 50th or the 20th birthday. Have you
Yeah.
planted 20 trees? That every year, instead of buying the cake and organizing parties, why not buy a tree and plant? That remembers you that, oh, in this year I planted the other tree. In the other year I did this. So it is something that we want to see at the burial places. People bring flowers. Flowers has nothing to do to remember someone. You plant a tree that oh, I planted this tree in memory of gracious Dennis. However much he has died, but at least there is a tree which is being conserved and is protecting the environment. And we can only penetrate this space by using the faith leaders. Once we don't hold them, and because as I said, everyone want to book a space in heaven. So they will assume those ones are already in heaven and they already have a space in heaven. So that is one thing we have done. But also we have gone far as training the faith leaders and on the conservation of the environment. Sometimes you be in a theological school and all things that being taught is about interpreting the Bible, how Moses moved with the Israelites and crossing the Red Sea. And, so all the consecration is on the Red Sea, is on the Bible, but there's nothing to do with the practical part of the environment. Pastor, you'll bear with me witness. I don't know whether it is in a theological school. They don't talk about these things. Yeah, the environment, things to do with how gender can be operated, things to do with economic empowerment, things to do with the conservation of the environment. It is very rare in theological schools. People concentrate more on Bible interpretation to win soul for Christ. But you're winning soul for Christ, but this soul is supposed to be on the environment. So if you don't conserve the environment, are you winning soul for Christ or you're causing more harm than good? So it is something that we have done and ensure that we conducted a number of workshops and trainings to impact the knowledge to these faith leaders. And I told you the structure runs from up to down to the grassroots. So as we are impacting knowledge on them, we're telling them, go back to the community and send this message back to the community. And the church has a lot of church land that is left idle. Yeah. And the beauty with Africa, they have a lot of land which is being left idle and nothing is being done on it. But the only thing we are doing is to cry, we are poor, but we have enough resources. You have land. And if you plant trees on this land, it will attract rain, and rain will help you to do more farming. And we're telling them, please, can you harvest the rain? Can you harvest the rainwater that is falling? Because water comes and then you just see flood everywhere. But we can harvest this and do irrigation in dry areas. Yeah. So it is a slow, development it is a multi-dimensional process, slowly, but we shall be there. But the main thing is having the mindset changed. But also we went ahead to create what we call the gender. I mean, we have the gender champion, but we also have the environment champions. We have the environment champions across the entire diocese. So this environment champion, you see, sometimes you cannot preach water when you're drinking wine. If you're preaching water, then you should drink water, other than preaching water and then later you drink wine. So we are training these champions to go and train others. But the condition is, as you're training others, what have you done? As a champion, as an environment champion, what have you done? And so we have seen a number of great improvement that they have gone back and they are participating actively in creating awareness and sensitization. They're sensitizing the public on how to do waste management. They're sensitizing the public how to dump, where to dump the resources, but also to do the waste segregation. You know, sometimes people just dump waste anyhowly. You mix the bottles with the other plastic, with the food. You know, you mix them, and yet some of them you can segregate them and know this one can be recycled, and then this one cannot be recycled, and then this one that cannot be recycled, where do we dump them? This one that can be recycled, what do we do with them? So those are all the kinds of training that we have taken them through, and so they are doing a great work in the community as far as the mindset change is concerned through awareness and also doing the training in the community. And then finally, we have created what we call the community activists. Now, the community activists are just like the change agents that we have across the entire, in the gender aspect of it, in the environment aspect of it. So these community activists are change agents that operate within their locality, within their villages where they're staying. Yeah, because we agree and we acknowledge that we don't have resources for them to move to any other far distance. So we are telling them, can you operate within your locality, within your village where you're staying? Can you talk about the issues of gender? I mean, can you talk about the issues of environmental conservation? Can you create awareness? Can you ensure people are planting trees? Can you ensure people are doing smart agriculture and smart climate? You know, you go for a meeting and people are coming with the bottles, plastic bottles of water. At the end of it, all after the meeting, do you know the implication you would have left in the environment? You know, these are things that we need to think about. Instead of going with the plastic bottles, why not have, people are now moving away from the broken bottles to the plastic bottles, not knowing the implication it has on the environment. We're talking about using the polythene bag, the black caveras. In Uganda, we call it black caveras. Every shop you go, they're there. And so we are telling them, why not buy your shopping bag that you always go with every time you're going to shop, other than going every time you go, you come back with a cavera. Every time you go, you come back with that polythene bag. At the end of it all, you end up, contaminating yourself, and also these caveras have their own effects on the human being. So it is something that we are pushing on, and we are praying that it catches fire. And of course, the advocacy is being done, because also we need to, for us to have these activities all done and successfully implemented, we need to hold the government accountable. We need to have, in most cases, we work with the government hand in hand as the co-partners. We don't compete, but we supplement and complement on each other's intervention. And so we're asking the government, we're talking about banning the polythene bags, but we are not banning the industries that are producing this polythene bag. Yeah, it is just like treating the symptom, and you have not gone to treat the real sickness. So can we tackle the sickness from the main aspect of it, other than looking at the symptoms of banning the caveras, and yet we have not closed the factories that are producing these plastics, the factories that are producing these black polythene bags? So we need to start from that area. After having that done, then at least you're sure that even if you're looking at down, you will have cut off the production of this, and so people will not have where to go and get some of these plastic things. But you see, as I say, sometimes the government has the other priorities, and sometimes they don't put some aspect into priority, and yet they are really very, very key things for the growth. And we are using the faith leaders to do more of these activities. However, doing all these activities also has its own challenges. Yeah. And we cannot just talk about what we are doing and we will talk about the challenges that are there. There are a number of challenges, and these challenges also sometimes we can turn them to be opportunities. Personally, I have not looked at any challenge to, anything that happened in your life and it is a little hard. You need to look at, how do I make this an opportunity for growth? Yeah. Where there is a challenge, at least there is a way, and you can pick a lesson out of it, and you can use that as a lesson for ensuring that you do something for it. The first challenge, as I talked about, is the buy-in of the government over these issues of the conservation of the environment. It is totally not there. The government has a different priority, totally different with what the church is talking about, with what the civil societies could be talking about as far as the conservation is concerned. For them, their priority is, how do I win the next election? That is the main priority of the government. How do I win the next election? The rest, to whom it may concern, none of their business. As long as I have won, I am a member of parliament, I am done. So you suffer in the village there with your hot temperature, suffer with whatever. For me, so there is that challenge of the lack of political will and the buy-in from the government. But also we need to look at the aspect of corruption. Yeah, that the industries are coming in and people are just selling the trees, and you try to talk about it, the person passed behind you and bribed the other side, and so before you know it, the forest is already being cut down, and someone is constructing the sugarcane factory in it. Then you ask yourself, so where are we heading? The question I've always asked myself is, this generation is already suffering like this. How about the next coming generation after our generation? If God doesn't come tomorrow, unless God comes tomorrow, then it will end with our generation. But if he doesn't come, what will happen in the next coming generation? So it is something that we need to think about and think about and think about. Of course, there is the challenge of limited resources, but the only way we can counteract the challenge of limited resources is to have the local participation. Ensure that the local people are actively participating in some of these activities and they have knowledge, because the knowledge gap is what is actually the greatest problem in the implementation of any program. Knowledge gap, because it goes into details of changing the mindset and ensuring that people do the right thing at the right time in the right place. But it is a challenge. It is really a challenge. So by and large, I still see the interfaith leaders or the faith leaders, they hold a very virtual role as far as environment, as far as the development of any economy is concerned. We need to hold them with the tight hands, and also sometimes we hold them accountable, because you cannot preach to the already wounded soul. You have to preach to a soul that is unwounded. So that is a little that I would wish to share, but of course we would share more as time goes on. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Can I add
questions?
something quickly?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was a theologian. I guess he was a former pastor. He was a theologian. He was a academic, basically. Reinhold Niebuhr between the 30s through to the 70s, he was largely active in the US. But he held, and a lot of what Gracious was saying with regards to the challenges in societal ecosystem trying to get things happening came down to, I talked about God is love and the love ethic and the reason why that's given us free will. But down here, that is enacted or lived out through justice. And so justice is a really big part of it, because we can't have, for a country, if Uganda said, you know what, we're just going to do away with our military and we're going to do away with all of this sort of stuff, and we're just going to live off the love ethic. Well, Singapore did it. We're just going to live off the love ethic and just live as a guiding example of how to live as a love community. I mean, then basically the place would be invaded by whoever wants it. So there's got to be this system of justice happening. And so we've got systems of justice within our societies. What Gracious was saying, which is prevalent around the world, is the challenge in a justice system not working properly is then you get corruption happening. And without that moral ethic that encourages you not to do those behaviors from a value system perspective, which is the role of religion and spirituality in a justice system, would be, well, I'm not going to do it because there is a consequence, even if nobody knows that I've done it, or that I've done this deal, I've stolen this thing, or whatever it is that I've done, signed the document when nobody was looking, or whatever. There is a consequence. And when Gracious was saying that the politicians are just looking for the next election they just want to secure their spot in the next election, they'll be active for that next election. That does give power to the people to encourage politicians to make the right choices. And he mentioned something else as well with regards. So going back to what I was saying about Niebuhr. So what Niebuhr had was he was challenging power with truth, but also he was looking at that love justice dynamic, and it pervaded a lot of his philosophies. And he was dealing with world wars, Great Depressions, mass migration. And in a paper I wrote recently, I said we're probably going to face a lot of this stuff too. Europe was post World Wars was completely decimated, and struggling with hunger. Again, migration were going to the richer countries, which then had to have the challenge of dealing with all the people coming in. And what Andrea and I imagine you on this show have been talking about is challenges that migration is going to put on countries and borders and military systems and even justice systems. And that's going to be a big deal. But the church and religious institutions on the whole are well placed globally to be able to deal with the human element and the human concerns and the spiritual side, more so than the government structure side. So we're there to help the people, and but I think what Gracious was saying is we need to influence those institutions need to be able to influence the people that are listening to be able to operate with a particular set of standards under justly, but also to take positive action and hold other people accountable. And the frustration that I think I've had on the No Show, the frustration that I think I felt from what Gracious was saying in particular as well. In fact, all of us have been saying there's this sort of element of frustration where people want a quick fix, but we actually need, just tell us what to do. But, Claire was saying, but we need this moment of, I guess we need this moment of being able to see the biggest system that we're operating in and understand what that plan is and give governments the opportunity to be able to enact it. The challenge is nobody wants to plant the tree on their birthday. They want to eat the cake. So possibly the solution is both. We eat the cake and plant the tree. But we need the Davids and the Richards, I think, and their worlds to come on board. And I know, well, I at least heard that BlackRock were doing a lot in terms of the environmental sustainability and trying to back that. And then I heard some problems with that. But and other organizations are starting to come on board with that. I'd love to hear what you have to say, although this is about religion and spirituality. But it's like, how would religion and spirituality influence the big business side, other than those big business leaders being already religious?
Tim, there's a couple of things you mentioned which I bring up. I mean, one of them is when Richard and I were going through this cathartic journey of, what does our career mean to us, having spent 30 years making money for big money, and realizing that investments are not going to solve the problems that we face. We spent really probably the most kind of thought-provoking part of that time, of that journey, going back into ideas of moral philosophy and what is good and those sort of things. And we came across your person, Reinhold Niebuhr, and he had this book that summed it all up. And the title of the book itself summed it all up. It just said "Moral Man and Immoral Society," and it goes to this part about what everyone here, from Dr. Pender, Claire, Gracious, has been talking about, which is our own actions and where we see that. And a part of it, ultimately, from what Richard and I came from, is maybe you can't change the rest. Maybe that is up to God. But what is your action? That doesn't change you from asking what is your action, which is your comment about your will, your free will, which is where we ended up back even further with St. Augustine, who was dealing with what is free will and what is that choice that you take because you have free will. Because for St. Augustine, the idea of free will is not that you can choose to do anything you want, but that you could choose to do what takes you to God. And I think that's where that moral man and immoral society comes through. I think this is the part where, as Claire says, she no longer needs to feel she has to persuade. And the actions that Gracious is talking about, we go out there, we do.
I think we just need to.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think we just need to rephrase. Shut up, God will do. No, we need to rephrase and shut up. Do your deeds.
Or
Nice.
speak up even.
So I wanted to give Claire a chance to talk. David, you've got. I know you've got a question for Claire.
Yes, indeed. And you know, it really does kind of come into all of this, and it's really to hear more about what you said about, you know, the Pope, and you mentioned about kind of Laudato Si, but really more basically, very basically, fundamentally, you know, how does all those messages, faith make a difference, and how much impact is it actually having from the 1.4 billion Catholics, you know, many of whom you've interacted with in Singapore, Malaysia, and Brunei, and I know you've been to other places as well and spoken in other places too.
Okay, thanks so much, David. Well, for the benefit of those who may not know, the Pope wrote this encyclical called Laudato Si, Mi Signore, Care for Our Common Home, in 2015 to target the Paris UNFCCC meeting, and it was cited several times at that meeting. It's had an impact not just on Catholics, but on a lot of other religious leaders around the world, because it's an open letter, and it was the first of its kind. The popes generally write on doctrine, but this was not a letter of doctrine, and it wasn't just to Catholics alone, it was to everyone. The Laudato Si has really given birth to so much action on the ground. There was a movement that started that time it was called the Global Catholic Climate Movement. Now it's called the Laudato Si movement. They are in so many countries around the world. The Vatican in 2021 started the Laudato Si Action Platform. It's a digital platform, yes, but it targets 7 working groups of religious families, parishes and dioceses, organizations, healthcare, schools, and the economic groups as well, to take action, ecological action. So that's going on. And then there are so many other groups that I cannot name. They started in Europe, in the different North America and Asia, and the group that I am leading, also the Laudato Si Asia group, is also devoted to the principles in Laudato Si. It's not only Catholic, it's for everyone. In answer to your question, yes and no. It's had a big impact on the church, but also the church is a very big and old institution. Change is slow to happen, not just in Laudato Si, but in many other areas. You know, when you have a big animal, it's hard to move fast, right? It's not so nimble. But having said that, I'm pretty proud of the action that has been taken from the ground level to the papal level to speak out. In 2023, the Pope came out with an exhortation, apostolic exhortation called Laudate Deum, meaning praise God. And it was targeted at COP28, where he called upon world leaders to really take sincere climate action. He talked about weak political will. He talked about the inequitable situation we have, where power is in the hands of a few to the detriment of the many, and for us to always bear in mind the poor. He talked about the role of civil society and so on. It was a pretty good letter actually, and that was part of the church's advocacy. So the church has actually been more active. They signed on to the Paris Agreement, I think, in recent years. They've taken up this advocacy. They were very active at COP28. The Pope was supposed to be there, but he was not well. He could not make it. But that's what we've been doing. And so I've been involved in the Laudato Si Action Platform, and now at the Asia level and also at the Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei level. What we do is, I said, we roll out as one vision mission. But the two things about what Tim mentioned about justice, and I think no one's mentioned this word resilience, it's critical, because a lot of my work on the ground has been on resilience. I was a consultant with Miserio actually on building community resilience to climate impacts. And that was to work with Missouri partners, and not just Catholic partners, anyone, on how to help communities build their resilience to climate change impacts. And that's part of our mission as well. And I think that what's really important in terms of bringing a spirituality to what we do is what we call an ecological spirituality. And that is practiced by all religions and all people of spirituality. It is simply being in oneness with creation, or oneness with nature, or whatever it is you want to call it for those of us who don't believe in creation. And, the way forward has to be this pathway, recognizing that you can't have resilience without justice. So you can't just work on disaster risk reduction, for instance, and you can't just, work on livelihood resilience, economic resilience, social resilience. All these things are critically important, but justice has to be that framework, because we can't have peace without justice. But we can pursue justice without talking about resilience. That is possible. But although then I don't know who will be alive at the end of the day when justice is attained. All right. Okay. So this twin arms, the Pope speaks in Laudato Si of integral ecology. It's an abstract term, but basically it talks about cultural ecology, environmental, economic, social, daily life, and so on. He talks about all these things, which presents a holistic picture of us working in harmony with one another and with creation. So it's this triangle, with basically me, other people, other creatures, plants, animals, and then with God. Okay. So whether or not we can achieve that. And I think really what the call is for an ecological conversion. And again, not just for Catholics, for everyone. Because if you look at the fruit of the tree, why there's so much bad fruit, and climate change is global warming, it's a bad fruit that we've produced, then we know that we haven't been doing enough. Okay. So going back to earlier discussions here today about, who's responsible, it really is, why should God fix things when he did not? It's not him who actually emitted the greenhouse gases. It's not him who threw the rubbish in the sea. All right. So it was us. So we should go pick up our own rubbish, right? We should fix up what we've done wrong and ask him for mercy and help to help us. And secondly, I think each and every one of us is a drop of God. It's his spirit in all of us. It's his spirit that gives life, whether we believe it or not. This thing about talking about God as if he were a separate entity, I think is missing the whole point. We have to acknowledge that we are not just like, Jesus or whatever name we have for God. We are him. We are a little drop of him in the ocean that is God. Okay. So the last thing I really want to say is something I forgot earlier about the rural and urban. I went to many villages in different countries, Bangladesh, India, Vietnam, Philippines, and so on. And one common question, whether they were Christians or whether they were Muslims or whether they were Buddhist, after I tell them the story of climate change and what's happening, they always end up asking, what can I do to help? And many times I used to cry over that question because I expected them to be very angry, knowing that they were not at fault for the situation. It's people, it's the rich and the richer, who have caused this. But I said, you are asking me that question, you know that you are not to blame for the situation. I said, why? And they would tell me, because we are one family, and these people whom we call uneducated, because they can't read or write, they to me had far more spirituality. I've never heard that question asked of anyone in any urban audience that I've been to. I've talked to hundreds of people, right? That stark difference, it always hit me. We never ask the right questions. So to me, that is the essence of ecological spirituality. Am I one? Am I humble enough to admit that I am one? We are more than stewards. We are sisters and brothers with creation, And maybe if we all ask that question, what can I do to help? Instead of asking other questions, we'll go much further away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think you've just left us with a call for action, which is simply
Yeah.
to ask that question. What can I do to help?
Thank you.
I think Gracious has also given us a great action. We should all go and plant a tree for every year that we've been on this earth. If everyone did that,
And
that would be pretty good.
I wanted to say I had a comment from a friend in Nairobi last year, and we were talking about trees, and he was pointing to that trees, and he was saying he tells parents when they're having children, plant a tree so you can tell them you will have your marriage under this tree.
Nice.
All right, so
And-
just conscious.
And I have one I always tell people here: if you want to sit under a tree, then you must plant a tree now. If not, you will not sit under someone's tree being planted by another person.
And I like to say, please plant a local tree. Please don't plant a non-native tree. Okay, plant the right tree.
I think, you know,
True.
Grush,
So
yeah,
feed
exactly.
someone.
And we do a lot of that, Tim. Tim and I plant a lot of fruit trees. But the waste crisis you were also talking about, like, it's not just, you know, like it's in Asia as well. It's out of control, right? But the reason people have plastic water bottles is because the water's so contaminated that they can't drink out of the taps. So I think a really good solution would be to focus on water everywhere and but then you've got countries like Nigeria where Nestle are just doing so much damage, taking the water, leaving the waste. You know, it's a horrible one. But Richard, we're gonna get closer to wrapping up.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and being the nasty one, I'm always the one prepared to ask the ugly questions, right? So we've talked about, we touched upon it. It struck me here as well as we kept on discussing it, and particularly Dr. Bhupender, but also Claire, actually Tim and Gracious as well. You all mentioned this about the resources and the resources running out. And it's a big thing for me and David. Coming from sort of the financial world, you always look at things like resources because you want to invest where there's plenty of them. And sometimes you want to invest when there's few of them because it means the price is going higher. But looking through the way the world is looking today, and there is a big consciousness everywhere of precious resources being depleted at an unprecedented rate, and everyone believing they have the greater right to them. For whatever reason, we are the ones who should have it. Do you sense, and this is for everyone, do you sense that we are going back into some of the uglier chapters through our history when we used religion as an excuse for actually going out there and saying we are the ones that are, you know, President Erdogan's own language was, we are God's chosen people. We are the one that are entitled to this. Because that, for me, is very much the ugly side of religion, that you're trying to post-event justify why you should be the entitled one, which is exactly the opposite of Dr. Bhupender, and forgive me if I pronounced it wrong. Seva is all about helping, right? Assisting, if I understand it correctly, which is the good context of how we reach out with religion. Are we going back to the kind of modern equivalent of the Crusades and saying, we are the ones that are going to take this because it's in the name of religion rightfully ours?
No, I don't think any religion teaches us to be superior over each other. It's just that as a humanity, we are all at that one platform. No one is superior, nobody is below. We are not entitled, we are not the only organism living on this earth. Humans are not the only source are entitled to use the nature, to use the resources. It is the other animals and other plants also who should be using the resources. Yes, the other blessed ones we can think about and use it. All the more we have more responsibility as humans to see that we use the resources substantially and with cautious, so that we don't deplete it, we don't destroy it for the others. We see that we share the feel of sharing and caring for all. No religion teaches you to be selfish, self-caring, or self-centered. Every religion teaches the same thing. It teaches only the same path to go to the Almighty. That's it. The different path. That's
Yeah. Do we see hope that this is actually taking place, and the ugly rumblings that sometimes comes up in the news, is that actually a minor problem, or is it growing stronger?
No, that's only minor. That's very minor. The more the sensible, the loving people, the more these people are more in number than these ugly fragments here and there, trying to cause so much of destruction here and there. No, otherwise the earth wouldn't have stand so firm till now. The planet would have been so positive till now. The only fragment of people with their own selfish interest, with their own political interest, with their own self-centered ideas are the ones who are destroying. And nobody, none of the normal people, none of the positive thinking people or religious people do this sort of destructive work.
Yeah, there's so many studies about it, and to me, it's where the hope lies, but it's also where one of my frustration lies. 70% of humanity is committed to a positive future for all life on Earth. 70%, but the narrative is controlled by 30%, and we've got Christian nationalism. We've seen a lot of the divisions in India between the Hindus and the Muslims. I mean, we're seeing what's going on in Burma with the Rohingya. I mean, it's all over the world, right? The militarization, but it's not the majority. But the problem with the majority is everyone's saying, I can't stand this anymore. It's too ugly. I don't want to be part of it. Everyone's too abusive on social media. I'm going to go off it. And I'm like, no, come back. Come back. We need the 70%. We need to define the narrative and stop letting them.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's more subtle than that. And it goes back to Reinhold Niebuhr and his book, Moral Man in a Moral Society. And I think the best thing to leave it, that's the call for action, is go read it. It's a very short book. The famous interview was between New York Times journalist and Barack Obama, when the interview was kind of stuck for conversation. And they asked him, what do you think about morality or something? And he kind of latched onto that to say, my favorite philosopher is Reinhold Niebuhr. And he really does talk about that thing about the 70 and 30. And he really addresses it honestly to say, are we true in saying the 70 isn't doing something? Or is the 30 when the 70 gets their own kind of underwear into a twist and forget about what they really want? And they make their voices to become the engines to propel their own defeat in the sense of what they actually want. So you have to be kind of very, very accepting of the fact that when you, as that drop of God in this ocean of life on our planet, that as a drop, your actions are effective, because the whole, as Dr. Berinda started, one of the first comments, we are all in that one and one in that all. I don't remember the exact words in there.
Yes.
And if we forget that, then we get into this thing where we start demarcating. Is it them, us? Is it this, that? And what Reinhold Niebuhr finishes his book is about is how do you allow the morality of the individual to work its way before it's overtaken by the fanaticism of a group that then says we are moral.
So I mean, I have this here, and I feel I have to say something about it. So this is the Book of Discipline. So there's a Methodist Book of Discipline from the Methodists in Singapore, and in this, what they articulate is what we articulate, but what is articulated by the people who put this together is how we agree to behave. And I know organizations put a poster up around their organization. HR manages to put posters up everywhere or screenshots or something like that, but it doesn't have the depth of content as something like that. And it also says how we're going to deal with people who don't follow this and how we're going to discipline them. That's not what the discipline actually meant. It's more the book of how we're going to behave. And in there, it starts with the general rules. The first general rule is do no harm. And the second general rule is do good. And then it's got a whole list that Claire was talking about, a whole bunch of social principles that were in that encyclical. And they're also in this too. And that's what religion, I mean, the role of religion and spirituality, the title of the topic today, is almost a set of values and way of behaving and operating in the world that holds us to account, that we're willing to stand by, and that we're willing to hold somebody else to account to, who is within this who's in this membership, I suppose, of this particular thing. And the recent one, you'll be very pleased to know, Andrea, well, as recently as in the last decade or so, is the sphere of creation care is in there. And I think it also harkens us back a little bit to the fellow who was saying, shut up, God will sort it out. There is a bit where in the book of Genesis 1, I mean, you don't have to read very far to get there, where it says, this is in Genesis 1:26, God said, let us make man in our image and after our likeness, and importantly here, and let them have dominion, man being humanity, humankind, Andrea. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, etc., and be fruitful and multiply, have dominion and subdue the earth, right? So those two words, dominion and subdue, get taken out of context by somebody who wants to say, I have dominion over this, so I can do whatever the heck I want. I can dig the thing up, I can destroy it, I'm dominion. But actually, when you look at the Hebrew, radach, and you go down to how it's used in different contexts and the contextualization of it all, you actually see that it's more like king-like or ruler-like authority. So that is, we have, but from a kingdom or queendom, but a monarchy type perspective, where we are no king or queen wants to lay waste to their own land and see it all fall to pieces. They want to take care of it and operate it as well as they can. Well, no good king would do that.
Yeah, exactly. Apart from the mad kings. Yeah,
there's a few mad kings. I mean, the problem with the monarchy is you can get a good king, but their offspring may be disaster. But that word, often translated as rule or dominion, which is what we read dominion, it's really about an authority that holds with it responsibility. And I was reading some commentary by a fellow called Andrew, what was his name? Andrew Basden. And he was, we talk about stewardship as looking after that which we have been given in a responsible way. And if we can get those values out to everybody to look after what we've been given in a responsible way, this would be great. But he said, actually, stewardship, you may not feel that love connection with that which you are steward over. And he was saying he'd like to think of it more as shepherdship over what we have, and in particular, good shepherdship. The reason for the good shepherd is the bad shepherd will just walk away and let the wolf eat everything, but get saving his own skin. The good shepherd is really out there to really care for that which he has been entrusted and to take it out. I quite like it. Of course, a good shepherd has been used in lots of other ways too. But yeah, that stewardship and that responsibility. And I think when Gracious was talking about changing the mindset, I think the role of religion and spirituality is big time in being able to change the mindset. But we must be leading by example, and we must be willing to be censured when we do step out of line and not have this infallibility, because we are creatures, and but at the same time we have a responsibility. And if we can, what I love about this tome of rules, even though it sounds problematic, is that there is a depth enough of thinking in there to say, I agree with this, and I'm happy to live by these rules. I mean, and the Bible's got rules too, of course, and spiritual texts have various rules. It's when you mentioned like Turkey deciding that, well, the political party in Turkey saying that we've got a moral and religious right to this. I think that's just the activation of the masses for political purposes and political gain. And the masses, the difficulty with the churches there, or the religious institutions, is that if they speak out against it, they can get arrested.
Yes.
From a regime that's trying to silence. But sometimes people will need to speak out and get arrested for the change to end up happening, and remove a regime that is using religion as its own mechanism for holding power. And so that's the unpleasant, dangerous part of this, is that if we want to stick by a set of rules, we got to hold to account. And not everybody's agreed to the rules, of course, but there are some general rules of humanity. I think 10 Commandments are reasonable general rules of humanity, at least the ones where you're not going off killing people or running off with their wives or property or spouses or whatever, and lying and thieving and everything else. So and again, that all comes down to justice. So there's this love ethic, and then there's the justice ethic in there as well. So we should make sure we're not voting in prime ministers and presidents who aren't abiding by the 10 Commandments. But let's wrap it up, because like we're coming up to 2 hours, and obviously people will switch off.
Yep.
Takeaways. Gracious, do you want to start? Like when I'm listening to everyone, I think the philosophy that Dr. Bipenda was talking about within the Sikh community, it goes back such a long time, and it's just really central. And then when you look at organized religion, which isn't necessarily going back thousands of years in some parts of the world, it's moved around the world and grown. To me, it feels like an opportunity. It's a communication channel where we can get a lot of people. Like there's 1.4 billion almost Catholics, right? If we can activate 1.4 billion, we can create a massive change. So I think that's a real opportunity. So just Gracious, do you want to start? Like one idea, 3 ideas, however many, what people can do listening to this?
I think I would go last. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Who wants to go first?
Second last.
Claire?
I'm happy to kick it off, and it's very brief in my case. I fundamentally, utterly, truly believe that we are all unique. We all have our place in the world, and we all have our rights, but with the rights comes the responsibility. And that responsibility means you need to always be effectively responsible for your actions. And let's leave it at that. And then everyone can extrapolate as far as we want to go, but you are ultimately responsible for what you do.
Yeah.
And if I may follow from my friend and colleague Richard there, and to bring the idea of rules along, I'd like to bring up 2 rules. They are rules from St. Augustine, and they speak to me about the interaction we have between what we call the global north and what we have failed to recognize as the beautiful south. And those 2 rules are: those who own something in the world should be careful in wanting to share it in common. It follows once they have entered the monastery. And the next rule is, but those who own nothing should not look for those things that they were unable to have in the world. And this speaks to what Richard is saying. We are all unique in our place. We need the things that we need in those places. We do not solve the problems we have today by the beautiful South trying to mimic all the problems of the global North. And we do not solve the problems of the world today by the global North trying to tell the people in the beautiful South they must look like them.
It's
I
very,
pick up from
Okay.
very important.
Yeah, I'll go next. All right. I've said it before. I think really it's a time of consciousness. I think we need to be cognizant of something called the collective egos that drive these conflicts and these disagreements. I like to remember the work of Marshall Rosenberg, who talked about nonviolent communication, because the violence we're seeing externally is a reflection of the violence within us. And, you know, we can have rules and we can have exhortations and preaching and so on, but we assume that people will listen because they are in a state where they're ready to. And the thing is that many are not ready because they're broken inside, or there's pain inside, and there's hurt inside. There's a famous saying, you know, if I don't heal myself, I will bleed in the rest of the world. So I think we need to move towards a culture of healing. We have this in the Laudato Si Asia. I realized it was so important. It's a culture of care program. And I think all of the religions and spiritualities talk about love, but we're not very good at practicing it. What we need to save the world is a crazy kind of love, not this logical, small, minus that. We need to have a crazy dream. We need to start to dream again. We need to start to love beyond all measure and believe that love really does conquer all. And how that love translates to action is through justice and, to me, resilience. We have advocated the 7 R's, if people can remember it. I know there are many R's, but you know, I've condensed them into 7. That is refuse, reuse, repurpose, recycle, redesign, and regenerate, if we want to take actions for justice and take accountability. But more importantly, we need to simply be better and do better. Thank you to all of you.
Beautiful, Claire. Beautiful.
I
Dr. Bender.
I take it from Richard. Like Lord Bernard Shaw says, your liberty ends where man knows begins. So the freedom is where it's independent of what it is. Like Andrew was saying, it's the 70% people who's taking care of, the 30% are distractors. What we need is 70% of the people to be more vocal, maybe more progressive, and more impressing your deeds through your deeds and through your actions. Emphasize the need of the hour of taking care of the nature. The day we learn to nurture the nature would be wonderful. It will be the reverse, that will start the reverse of our climatic changes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you, everybody. You're hearing me out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
I think
right,
I can
gracious.
follow. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for this meeting, and we look forward to have more kind of this engagement, because it is one way that we can learn from each other and relearn and unlearn. But my concluding word would be, I want to borrow it from the word from Pope Francis, that we must care for the earth, not because it is our duty, but because it is our home. So that is one thing we all need to do. We must care for this earth. It is our home. And I would also want to say that, you know, we are not inheriting this earth, but we are borrowing it for our children. So if we are using it today, let's have that aspect of sustainability, that we're using it for today, but also our children and our great-great-children should also find it a better place to live, so that they can also enjoy their lives. Otherwise, I'm glad to be here and nice meeting new colleagues. Wish you a very blessed day, and we continue to be in touch. Thank you.
Nice. Oh, you guys have all been awesome. So,
Hey, I
one
didn't
of
get
the
my
big...
final say.
Oh, sorry, Tim.
I won't have a final say. I'll let John Wesley have his final say. He was talking in a sermon about the use of money, and he said, earn all you can, save all you can, give all you can. And he was wanting more giving to be happening from the people rather than just amassing for self. So earn all you can was great, because there's an element of your skills and abilities being valued by society and out there and coming in. Save all you can means we're not over consuming to the point of waste and nonsense. And if we're saving all we can, and then we can give all we can, and really give all we can, then we're actually giving of ourselves, of our money as well, of our resources to be able to do more good and do less harm in the world, and sort of try and correct some of the mistakes that others have made. But that was from John Wesley. I will also just do one thing for if you're offsetting, if you're looking at from a climate perspective, offsetting. One of the things that I wrote in an article many years back, which was about offsetting your flying, but it actually went into offsetting a whole bunch of other stuff. If you're looking at planting trees, for example, you can easily go out and plant some trees. And I've got some articles that you can go and have a look at as to how that worked that out. But I was talking about triple offsetting. So don't just offset yourself. The idea was to offset three people. It was to offset yourself, offset somebody else who's not on board with this yet. So you're helping out the group that is not on board with it yet. And the third one was to offset an idiot politician. And I know that's a bit of harsh terminology, but the reason was we'll get so fed up of offsetting the politician that we might actually write a letter to them to say, can you please stop doing this? And if enough people write the letter, they will think that they'll be voted out of power and they will do something to actually manage it. But it's got to be your politician, not just some random politician in another country. So there you go. Triple offset, earn all you can, save all you can, give all you can, and triple offset.
Nice. So a lot of people ask me about hope, and hope is one of these words I often chuckle when people ask me, is there any hope? And the reason I chuckle is because when people ask me, I don't think they're really understanding the seriousness of the situation that we're in, or the fact that what we're doing right now is we're just tinkering around the edges of the challenge that we face, right? So I will feel that we have hope when that 70% of the world's population rise up and start doing something and start getting to work. And the idea that any one of us is powerless is completely wrong. And it just requires all of us to say, I'm going to get involved. I'm going to do something. I'm going to save something I care about. You know, I was just learning in the one of these cats in Europe has just been saved from the edge of extinction because people cared enough. You know, we just got to get involved in anything that we can, in any way we can. But we are going to suffer losses. Dr. Bipenda, you wanted to say something?
No, I was appreciating what you're saying.
Okay, you look like you're ready. But yeah, just don't feel hopeless. Just get involved. But the only, like I always say, action's it. Sitting in hope isn't going to change anything, but getting into action will change everything. And that's where we need everyone to go. You know. But thank you all so much for this. I really appreciate it. Really, really beautiful conversation, an important conversation. And by the way, a conversation that's given me hope. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Oh, no, I really appreciate it.
You all.
Thank you, everyone. God bless.
So maybe we're moving from shut up, God will do something, to speak up, God is doing something.
Yes, amen.
Okay.
and I add over here, shut up and do something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
all right, so we're gonna.
It is time to take action now. So the action begins straight away. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, so we're going to have a break of Climate Courage until sort of late August, September. This is my last filming from Phuket, and the next time I'll be up, it'll be in Singapore as our family returns. But we're excited about it. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So everyone stay safe.
Between now and September, everyone's got a chance to plant a tree.
Absolutely, but not one.
Triple offset.
So Tim, as you interact with the other fellow clergies, as you interact with other fellow theologians, tell them the message of integrating tree planting in their day-to-day preaching at the pulpit.
Yeah, I know Tim will already be doing it.
I have a short comment about planting trees. That so I have a space where there's a large amount of plants and a lot of brambles that grows there. And so you spend your time cutting it down because they think they're horrible, they hurt you, and all the rest. Until I realized what happens is that there are these oak saplings that are growing in them, and they protect them. So don't be too quick to judge. You never know what's actually growing there.
Ugly plants are beautiful plants too, right?
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna end the stream. But thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you
Bye-bye.
in
Bye-bye.
August,
Thank
September.
you.
All right, bye.
God bless you all.
Bye bye.
God bless you.